Late at night, a girl was hit head-on by a van. Two men hurriedly got out of the car to check on her. They found the girl lying on the ground, critically injured. One of them wanted to pick up the girl and rush her to the hospital, but the other man stopped him urgently. They were driving under the influence. If the girl woke up and became a vegetative state, they would have to take care of her for the rest of their lives. Having started this, they decided to go through with it to the end. They ruthlessly threw the girl down the hillside and fled the scene. At this moment, an unknown creature in the bushes heard the commotion and quickly rushed to the girl. Soon, the girl was jolted awake by a sharp pain. The next second, she was dragged into the darkness by the unknown creature. The poor girl had no power to resist and was brutally devoured. Early the next morning, the girl's father hurried to the police station to report that his daughter had not returned home the previous night. Meanwhile, a couple camping in the wild stumbled upon a book with a severed arm still hanging from it. Upon learning this, the police quickly arrived at the scene and found it was the girl's body. Her body was so broken that only her head was left. Judging by the extent of the damage, the police initially concluded it was a brutal dismemberment case. This was originally a quiet and peaceful village, known as a zero-crime tourist destination. Every holiday or weekend, tourists from all over the country gathered here to enjoy a rare leisurely time. However, recently, a series of bizarre events had occurred in the village. One night, a man got up to use the bathroom and accidentally rolled down a hill into a pit. The pit turned out to be a dug-up grave, and the body had been stripped out and eaten. Terrified, the man scrambled to escape, but then he faintly heard the growls of a beast. Before he could react, the man was pounced on by an unknown creature and dragged into the darkness as well. When the police arrived at the hillside, they were horrified by the gruesome scene. A newly recruited officer vomited on the spot. Similar to the previous situation, the body was in several pieces. The forensic doctor quickly examined the dismembered limbs and found bite marks on the victim's wounds. This did not seem to be a human act. It looked more like an attack by some kind of beast, but in recent years, no wild animals had been seen in the village. A few years ago, the village had developed tourist attractions and weekend farms to attract more visitors. For this reason, they cut down a large amount of the original forests, and most of the wild animals on the mountain were eliminated by the villagers. So, for the time being, it was difficult to determine the case, and it had to be shelved temporarily. However, the village chief, wanting to keep the village's economy growing, wanted to cover up the incident. He asked the sheriff to assign people to ensure the safety of tourists. Despite this, accidents still happened. In an orchard with many tourists, a husband and wife were picking in the orchard with their children. Suddenly, the man was flung through the air by a wild animal, which then grabbed him and ran up the mountain. This scene was spotted just in time by an officer on duty nearby, Kong Su, who decisively drew his gun and fired. But the beast was too fast, and Kong Su had to fire several shots before he could rescue the tourist. Although he didn't manage to kill the beast, this case seemed to provide a clue. The culprit was likely a wild boar. Due to the frequent fatal incidents, the police decided to temporarily close the orchard to protect the villagers' safety, but this was strongly opposed by the villagers. It was the busy farming season, and tourists were the village's main source of income. If the orchard was closed, they would have no revenue. Therefore, the villagers resolutely refused the police's request. The orchard remained open to the public, but for safety, the village chief spent a large sum of money to hire a professional hunting team. Each member of the team was burly and fully armed. The hunting team, based on the information provided by the village chief, immediately began to search the mountains. Soon, they found a huge footprint along the way, estimating that this wild boar weighed at least 0.4 tons. The captain, Man Bei, concluded that this wild boar was not an ordinary one. The team members instantly became alert, realizing that a fierce battle was inevitable. As night fell, the hunting team set traps in the mountains and lay in ambush until dawn. Finally, they spotted the wild boar. All the hunters in ambush rushed out, planning to drive the boar towards the trap. The camping couple was also interested in the wild boar. Just as the man wanted to take a closer look, he was hit head-on by the boar, letting out a scream. In the chaos, the boar, frightened, stumbled and fell into the hunter's trap. To prevent the boar from escaping, they quickly opened fire on it. The team members were all excited about catching the wild boar, but Man Bei had a nagging sense of foreboding because this boar wasn't as large as he had predicted. The next day, the village held a press conference. The village chief showcased the captured man-eating pig, attracting a large number of media reporters. Killing a 600-pound wild boar was indeed rare, making Man Bei a bona fide hunting star. However, the father of the murdered girl, Il Man, noticed something amiss. Il-man had once been a hunter himself, and he deduced from the length of the boar's teeth that it wasn't likely to eat people. Moreover, this was a sow. There must be a larger male boar out there, but the village chief thought Il-man was just talking nonsense and didn't take him seriously. To verify his suspicion, Il-man decided to dissect the boar himself. Only at this moment did the sow finally die. Il-man found not only the remains of poultry in the sow's stomach but also half a chewed-up magazine, yet no human tissue. Il-man concluded that the boars would share food, and the real culprit was the sow's mate. Now that they had killed the sow, the male boar would surely come down the mountain to seek revenge once it discovered its mate had been killed. However, the news reports about the man-eating boar were seen as a freak incident, and people believed the matter was resolved with no second man-eating boar to worry about. Thus, the village held a grand celebration feast, with the sow turned into crispy roast pork. Just as the villagers were joyfully gathering together to eat the roast pig, the objects on the table suddenly shook. Only the hunting dogs noticed the anomaly. Little did they know, the giant boar had already come down the mountain, ready to unleash its furious revenge, but the villagers had no idea that disaster was imminent. Just then, Man-bei noticed something banging against the iron gate and felt a sudden sense of dread. Amid the noisy chaos in the room, he had no choice but to fire his gun in the air to sound the alarm. The villagers finally fell silent. At that moment, a terrifying roar came from outside, and everyone realized the danger. They huddled in the corners in fear. A few brave villagers rushed forward and used tables to barricade the door, but the man-eating pig was still banging like crazy and wouldn't stop. Panicked, Man-bei raised his hunting rifle and began shooting, but this only enraged the boar further. Ultimately, the giant boar broke through the wall. Man-bei kept firing, one bullet after another, but to the boar, it was like being scratched. When the boar saw that the sow had been made into roast pork, it flew into a rage and let out a deafening roar, instantly shattering all the light bulbs in the room and plunging it into darkness. Just as the terrified villagers were so scared that they didn't know what to do, the man-eating boar suddenly rushed into the crowd and threw people into the air. The feast on the tables was turned upside down. The man-eating pig threw the villagers a few 10 meters away, wailing everywhere it went. Panicked villagers screamed and fled for their lives. One foolish villager tried to use a grass-cutting tool against the boar. The boar's steel-like tusks snapped the blade instantly, striking the young man's hip. The sheriff tried to climb onto a beam in fear, but the boar's wild charge broke the post, causing the sheriff to fall to the ground. The boar then bit off the sheriff's ankle and dragged him away. Another fearless villager threw a sickle, only to be immediately knocked down by the boar. The scene was filled with screams, with villagers either dead or wounded. Amid the chaos, Man-bei raised his gun and shot again, but the boar's skin is so thick that all the bullets that hit it turned into bullet cakes. Man-bei was so terrified he froze in place. The boar walked toward Man-bei. Just one glance from the boar made the mighty hunting star wet himself on the spot. But then the boar walked past him. This was the greatest humiliation for a hunter. Then the boar picked up the roast sow and left in a hurry. When Il-man and the officers arrived, they saw the scene was a complete mess. Il-man found Man-bei, half dead with fear in a corner, and told him that wild animals have a spiritual nature. The villagers roasting and eating the sow had completely enraged the boar, and it would surely return to attack the villagers again soon. Such a beast could not be allowed to live. They had to strike first. As a hunter, Man-bei had never been so humiliated. He knelt in front of the villagers killed by the boar and swore that he would not be a man if he didn't avenge this. Afterward, Man-bei cleaned his hunting rifle and sharpened the bullet edges. Il-man also takes a shotgun out of the box and forms a new pig-catching team with some ambitious young men. Il-man, as the team leader, led them into the mountains to track down the giant boar. However, after searching for half a day, they only found some animal carcasses and no sign of the man-eating boar. By the time they reached the depths of the mountains, dusk was falling. They discovered an old man living in the mountains. The kind old man took in the daredevil team and mentioned that a giant wild boar did indeed roam the mountain, and people often fell victim to it in the deep forest. He advised them not to provoke the boar. The old man revealed that the boar was an experimental product left by scientists during the war. A genetically enhanced boar. Besides its enormous size, the boar could break through a 20-centimeter thick steel plate at full sprint. Bullets could hardly penetrate its skin. He warned them to head back down the mountain at dawn, as confronting the boar would be like hitting a rock with an egg. But the group paid no heed to the old man's words. The next day, they continued deeper into the forest and finally found the giant footprints of the man-eating boar. They observed their surroundings and discovered an abandoned trap on the mountain, seemingly once used to catch tigers. Il-man was thrilled. Believing the trap could be reused with some adjustments, Man-Bay placed a sensor nearby and tied a bundle of explosives to a tree stump. They then followed the footprints and soon found a pile of boar droppings. Shortly after, they discovered more giant footprints nearby. It seemed the boar was within 100 meters of them. They followed the tracks on the ground, but the footprints disappeared into a mysterious cave. They concluded that this cave must be the man-eating boar's lair, but no one dared to enter recklessly. Man-Bay threw a tear gas grenade into the cave first, trying to force the boar out. When there was no response for a long time, they gathered their courage and slowly entered the cave in single file. But inside, they found no boar, only a few recently weaned piglets. To prevent the piglets from growing up and causing harm, Man-Bay unhesitatingly bled them to death to eliminate future troubles. Then he poured gasoline on them and burned them alive. However, the piglets' cries reached the ears of the man-eating boar. As they were about to leave the cave, they ran into the boar. Seeing its enemies so close, the boar bared its tusks and charged directly at them. Terrified, they turned and ran, with the enraged boar in hot pursuit, not willing to let them go. When they reached the foot of the mountain, they found there was no way out. In a desperate moment, they crawled into a drainage pipe. The boar was right behind them. The last officer to enter the pipe was a step too slow, and the boar's tusks grazed his hip. Fortunately, the boar was too large to fit into the pipe and could only roar in frustration before giving up. They thought this would be the end of their encounter with the boar. Unexpectedly, the boar returned to its lair and saw that its piglets had been roasted into crispy suckling pigs. Enraged, it roared at the sky. Late at night, as they slept, the sensor alarm went off. Man-Bay quickly got up, grabbed his rifle, and went to check it out alone. He found that a passing antelope had triggered the alarm, and he breathed a sigh of relief. But the next moment, he felt a chill down his spine. To his shock, the cunning boar had silently appeared behind him. With no other option, he drew a steel knife and prepared to fight the boar to the death. After a fierce battle, his screams quickly woke the others from their sleep. When they rushed to the scene, they saw Man-Bay pinned to the ground by the boar, being savagely bitten, his life hanging by a thread. Man hurriedly fired at the boar, but decades without practice had left him rusty. He tried to reload, but at the crucial moment, his rifle jammed. This caught the boar's attention, and it turned, glaring at them with murderous eyes. Seeing the dire situation, Man quickly opened a red umbrella he carried with him, and everyone hid behind him. In the next moment, the boar charged with full force. Like a matador, Man lured the boar into a preset trap, giving the group a chance to escape. But a single trap couldn't contain the enormous boar. As the boar was about to break free, they tried to carry the critically injured Man-Bay away, but he was on the brink of death. At that moment, the pig in Surayan's backpack suddenly squeals wildly. Upon hearing this, the man-eating pig immediately exploded with potential and broke free. They had to leave Man-Bay behind and once again fled for their lives. The boar chased them relentlessly, determined to rescue its piglet. In a moment of crisis, the four had to split into two groups. Surayan and Kansu risked raising the piglet high to attract the boar's attention. Man and another officer went down the mountain to get help. The boar, seeing its piglet, frantically chased after them. Surayan and Kansu ran for their lives but slipped and fell into a foul-smelling ditch. The boar quickly reached them, and they pressed themselves against the hillside, too scared to move, but the boar didn't dare attack, afraid of hurting its piglet. At this moment, all the boar wanted was to save its child. However, Surayan had no intention of returning it. Then, a venomous snake appeared, opening its jaws to attack the boar, seemingly wanting to swallow the fat pig whole. Seizing the opportunity, Surayan and Kansu bolted and ran into a tunnel. They saw a handcar and quickly jumped on it, desperately pumping to speed up their escape. But the angry roars echoed behind them once more. They also didn't know where the tunnel would lead. But Surayan and Kansu couldn't worry about that. They could only risk the unknown and desperately push the railcar forward. Fleeing for their lives, the man-eating pig was still in hot pursuit behind them. Surayan and Kansu were terrified the entire way, continuously pushing the railcar without daring to stop for a moment. Finally, they drove into a factory, seemingly having shaken off the man-eating pig chasing them. At this moment, Kansu suddenly noticed that the track ahead was ending, but the railcar was still speeding forward. Frightened, he quickly pulled the handbrake for an emergency stop. However, due to inertia, the railcar continued to slide forward even after braking. Fortunately, at the critical moment, the railcar stopped in time, and Surayan didn't crash into the steel pipes. Unexpectedly, the roar of the man-eating pig came from behind again. scaring them into urgently searching for an escape route. But the exit was blocked by barbed wire, and they couldn't get out. The man-eating pig rushed into the factory, searching everywhere for their traces. In a panic, Surayan and Kangsu hurriedly hid in a room, but the man-eating pig, following the scent of the piglet, quietly approached them from behind and smashed the glass. Terrified, Surayan and Kangsu quickly moved and quietly hid in an underground tunnel. The man-eating pig was walking right above them, drooling onto their faces, but they didn't dare to breathe loudly. At this moment, the piglet in Surayan's bag started to move and made a noise, exposing their location instantly. The man-eating pig turned back, broke through the iron net, and blocked their way. Surayan and Kangsu hurriedly turned to run in the other direction, starting a new round of chase. Seeing the man-eating pig quickly catching up, they frantically climbed up an escalator. The man-eating pig was madly ramming the escalator just beneath their feet. The ladder couldn't withstand the immense force and broke apart. Fortunately, at this moment, they managed to climb to a higher point and escaped another close call. Terrified and exhausted, Surayan and Kangsu collapsed on the ground. Having been attacked repeatedly, they decided not to sit and wait for death any longer. At this time, Surayan noticed a huge elevator across from them. She immediately thought of using the elevator to create a falling trap to kill the man-eating pig. The plan was to use the piglet as bait, luring the man-eating pig to the bottom of the elevator shaft, then crushing it with the elevator. Naturally, this dangerous task was assigned to Kangsu. To improve efficiency, Kangsu slid down the pipe in one swift motion, re-traumatization of the buttocks that had been injured by the boar's tusks. As soon as he reached the ground, he was spotted by the man-eating pig. The man-eating pig immediately charged after him. Panicking, Kangsu covered his butt and quickly ran away with the piglet, successfully diverting the man-eating pig. Surayan climbed to the other side to activate the elevator switch. Kangsu, carrying the piglet, sprinted towards the elevator shaft. Kangsu successfully lured the man-eating pig to the elevator shaft and then stopped. Seeing the piglet crying in pain, the man-eating pig, enraged, let out a roar and charged forward. Kangsu quickly dodged the attack, but unexpectedly, at the critical moment, the man-eating pig suddenly stopped, not plunging into the elevator shaft, seemingly realizing it was a trap set by humans. This scared Kangsu, making him break into a cold sweat and dare not move rashly. Just as the man-eating pig was about to attack Kangsu, the piglet let out a terrified cry for help. The man-eating pig heard the wailing of the piglets, and at this moment it no longer had time to care about the human in front of it. Knowing the danger, but in order to save its own children, the originally robust pace is now heavy. The man-eating pig walked into the elevator shaft and approached the piglet. The man-eating pig's eyes were already moist. Seeing this, Kangsu hurriedly closed the elevator door. Immediately, Surayan above pulled the switch. The next second, the 100-ton elevator began to descend rapidly, heavily crushing the man-eating pig. The falling trap was a complete success. The man-eating pig was now immobile, pinned under the elevator, emitting mournful cries, seemingly begging them to save its child. Surayan is moved to compassion and she rescues Piggy. However, still uneasy, Kangsu lit the dynamite in his hand and threw it in front of the man-eating pig. With a violent explosion, the man-eating pig was likely blown to pieces. When Kangsu woke up from his coma, he had become the pig-hunting hero of the village. They thought the ordeal was over, but little did they know that the piglet had escaped back into the forest. The glint of ferocity in the piglet's eyes suggested it would cause another chaos in the future. In fact, the man-eating pig in the film didn't harm humans without reason. It was mainly due to excessive land development, destruction of wildlife habitats, and poachers' involvement that led to a sharp decline in wild boar numbers. To survive, the boars were forced to dig up human graves and feed on human organs, gradually developing a strong interest in meat. Therefore, while we pursue rapid development, we must also pay attention to environmental protection. As members of this planet, we have a responsibility to protect animals and coexist harmoniously with them.